the college football playoff rankings. No shock there that LSU is number 1.
Go Tigers.
And then number 2, the Ohio State, undefeated. Then number 3, as I supposed while they were spanking NC State over their collective knee, Clemson no longer outside looking in. I don't believe they will be spending another day this year outside looking in until December 28th when they will play in the college football playoffs, barring something totally unforeseen, like maybe a meteor hitting the planet. Mm-hmm. And then number 4 is Georgia, with Alabama on the outside looking in. And sure enough, I see teams with an O on the right side of the dash in their record that's further down the road. Sorry, Minnesota, you're 9-0 for the first time since 1904. But you're behind a team with a loss in Alabama, which just gave up 46 points at home for the first time since 1907. And Oregon, your Pac-12 leaders right now. And Utah, your Pac-12, I guess, co-leader right now. There you go. So there's Minnesota sitting there at 9-0, just in front of the team they just beat in Penn State. Oh, and there's Baylor. There's Baylor. Let me see. Oh, wait, all the way down to 13. There they are. They needed overtime, a few of them, to beat TCU, but they're undefeated. As a matter of fact, sitting there at 13, Baylor's a Power 5 team, correct? Last I checked?
Correct.
That's the lowest ranked Power 5 team at 9-0 or better in the era, if you will, the vast college football playoff era. Now they play Oklahoma this week and Texas the following week. But would that be enough even to pop them into the top 4? I doubt it. Because the way I'm seeing this, Christopher, my colleague across the aisle, if you will, to use the phrase of the day, the way I'm seeing this is they are setting up Alabama to make it. They're setting up Alabama to make it. And they're setting up Alabama to make it over LSU, I guess, if Georgia beats them, right?
I think so.
Could that be possible, that LSU makes the SEC championship game, loses to Georgia if Georgia spanks them, and then Alabama sneaks in? Because they're 5, meaning somebody slips out of that top 4, don't they go in?
I can't see LSU, if say they run the table and then lose to Georgia in the SEC title. I can't see them being ahead of Alabama.
You can't.
I see them going to 4 at the worst.
So then why put Alabama 5? Why not put Oregon in front of it? Because at least Oregon would be able to sneak in as a Pac-12 champion, or Utah. You put Utah and Oregon at 5 and 6, respectively, not behind Alabama, not where you're waiting in line.
Well, I don't think there's any dispute that Alabama's not a top 5 team in the country. I don't think Oregon's a top 5. Alabama just lost barely to the number 1 team.
But this is not about who's a top 5 team, and you deserve to be a top 5 team. This is about who should play for all the marbles.
And we have that in the top 4.
I know, but when you put somebody at 5, that means you're the first one out, which means technically you should be the first one in when somebody falls out. And if Ohio State and Clemson win out, which many people are expecting them to do, then LSU and Georgia, one of them will have to lose.
Right.
Because they're going to play each other in the SEC championship game most likely. And if that happens, do you just swap Georgia and LSU and you tell Alabama thanks for the memories, and you do the same thing to the Pac-12 champions, who are whoever wins that Pac-12 game will have 1 loss and a championship in their back pocket? Sorry, LSU just means more to them because they're in the SEC, and their 1 loss was to Georgia, and they beat the Crimson Tide in their home field. That's why I'm saying when you put Alabama there, this is what you're communicating. I don't care that they would take it as an affront that they're not as good as Oregon or they're not as good as Utah and they're not a top 5 team. We're setting things up for how this plays out depending on what happens in the top 4. Yes? No?
I think this is setting up Alabama to replace Georgia at 4. And then Oregon is like, oh, you were so close. That's what I think.
I think
LSU beats Georgia, SEC, Alabama's in.
Or we could have top 8, and we're all sitting here saying, how could Penn State, Oklahoma, Florida, Auburn, and Baylor crack in there and play it all out? See?
But
again,
do you think those bottom 4 really have a chance to beat LSU?
Hell yeah. On any given Saturday? Hell yeah. Why not? And let's see one of these teams go on a run. And that's what I'm talking about here. Now, you could make the case that it makes LSU Alabama's game less intense and important because the loser still knows that they're in the top 8.
Right.
And that makes the regular season less intense in the same way that I just came on the air and said, hey, congratulations to all you Evansville fans. And Kentucky, now Coach Cal can use this to just peel the paint off the walls and get these kids on the straight and narrow, knowing that, when March rolls around, they'll still be. Does this affect their ability to be a 1 seed when the selection committee comes up with who's the top seeds in all 4 regions for the NCAA tournament? So I don't want to create a playoff system that does take some of the starch out of the regular season, but I still would rather have the conversation today. Hey, Oklahoma and Baylor, that's huge because the loser's out. Hey, what's also huge is Penn State, Ohio State, because Penn State would get themselves into the top 8. Ohio State might not fall out, but they would against Michigan. Hey, you know what also? Auburn has a shot here. What if Auburn beats Alabama? They both have 2 losses. The Iron Bowl means more now. Wisconsin taking on Minnesota later on this month. I mean, I could go on and on and on about how there are still important games to get into the bottom 4 of the top 8. And how if the top 4 and the bottom 4, the difference there is the top 4 get a home game, an actual real live home game. LSU would get a real live home game in Baton Rouge against, say, the 8th seeded team to kick off the college football playoff the week before Christmas. With all due respect to my friends at the NFL that just announced a triple header on the Saturday before Christmas in week 16 that's all on the NFL Network. Wouldn't you want to also see that weekend filled with college football playoff games that matter? Come on now.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download The Rich Eisen Show app.